Have you ever wanted something so much that you were willing to do just about anything to obtain it? Have you ever wanted something so much that you were willing to bend the rules, if necessary, to obtain that which you wanted so much? I once took a bicycle that did not belong to me. Just prior to that, I had moved into a new neighborhood. My mother and I, a single parent, an only child. And where we had lived before, it was unsafe for an 8-year-old to have a bicycle. And moving into this new neighborhood, it was safe for an 8-year-old to have a bicycle, but having made that sacrifice, a bicycle was not something that my mother could yet afford. There was a local bicycle shop, Bob's Cycle Shop, where he sold Schwinn's solely. There were different levels of the kinds of bikes that an 8-year-old would desire. And at the top of the line was a Schwinn Sting. I remember this vividly. And even some 45 years ago, that bicycle cost over $500. It was simply out of reach. It happened to be the case that there was a raffle for a Schwinn Sting. And in the mind of an 8-year-old, that raffle would go to the person who wanted it most. And I was certain, and I am still certain to this day, that no one wanted that Schwinn Sting more than I did. No one. It is truly impossible. I so wanted that bicycle. Bicycles for children are symbolic of a number of things. They're symbolic of freedom, transportation. They are symbolic of status. What kind of bicycle does one have? Throughout that day, I was the first one there. I was there before Bob's Cycle Shop opened. I was there throughout the entire day. And when they drew the number of the person to whom the Schwinn Sting would belong, it was not my number. It was an important lesson. It was a disillusionment. We can't just will things into manifestation. Shortly thereafter, and it was before the new school year started, there happened to be a bicycle on the grounds of the school. This was a safe neighborhood. It was not uncommon for kids to play outside, even after it had become a little bit dark outside. And a friend of mine and I, we were cutting through the schoolyard, and in that schoolyard was a bicycle. And in the mind of that 8-year-old, it was something akin to seeing a $20 bill or a $100 bill. Here is this bicycle that's unclaimed. So I took this bicycle home with me. It did not take long to discover that that bicycle belonged to Ryan. Ryan was going to be a classmate in just a couple of weeks. Now, having taken this bicycle home, you can imagine my mother was mortified. We discovered whose bike it was, and she made arrangements, and we went to the home of Ryan, where I met with Ryan and his father. And this could have gone in a number of different ways. I'd heard stories about children who had taken things that do not belong to them and how they spent time in the Youth Detention Center, YDC. You did not want to go to YDC. I don't recall all of the conversation. I remember there were some uncomfortable moments, as would naturally be the case, but this is what I remember before I had any conception of the word grace. I experienced grace that day. And my guess is it changed the trajectory of my life. It was kept quiet. I wonder what different trajectory my life would have taken if rumor had spread that there's a thief that's moved to the neighborhood. Grace. So much more than what we've earned. So much more than what we've merited. Compassion when we've made mistakes, however wittingly or unwittingly. Joseph's brothers were bitter with Joseph. Jacob, their father, loved him most. He favored Jacob. He gave him what's been referred to as a coat of many colors, sometimes described as a robe, but it too was symbolic that Joseph is special. And in their anger, it turned violent. They were willing to kill him, but Judah said, let's sell him into slavery. Today's passage picks up with Joseph sending the brothers home. Benjamin is Joseph's younger brother. And he sends all of the brothers back but Benjamin. And now Judah says to Joseph, Judah, the one that sold Joseph into slavery, take me. Send my brother Benjamin back. My father's been through too much. He's lost the love of his life. His daughter was assaulted. He lost his son, Joseph, not yet knowing that this is Joseph. The one who sold him into slavery, he says, take me. And with that, it was too much for Joseph. He couldn't contain it. He couldn't control it. He was overwhelmed. This is a story of grace from beginning to end. The human condition. I often describe it as like a vehicle that's out of alignment. How many of you have ever had a vehicle that is out of alignment? What happens when you take your hand off of the vehicle? It swerves. What happens if you do not correct the swerve? It can become a danger to ourselves or possibly other people. We are created in God's image. That is who we are. You've heard me say that countless times, and yet we have this human condition. Our nature is divine, and we have this condition, and we do. And it requires ongoing vigilance. We want freedom. We want self-sufficiency. We want to be a somebody. We want our lives to count. We want status. We want to be important. And in all of that, in these pursuits, there are times that we can be a danger to ourselves and other people. I saw a production of the story of Joseph before I had ever read it. I recall it happened to be on an Easter Sunday. They played the story of Joseph, and the depiction that I saw by the writers and the directors was extraordinarily compelling. I was glued to it, and I had no interest in anything religious. And I found myself just captivated with this actor. There was a humility, there was a gentleness, there was a peacefulness that I found so compelling. I realized in retrospect that in some ways this was a typology of the embodiment of God's character that would one day be more fully embodied in the person of Jesus. The embodiment of love, the embodiment of peace, the embodiment of justice. What is God's justice? Christians have debated over God's justice for centuries. In the past 1 week, I have had 2 of those tracts placed on my vehicle, one under my windshield wiper and the other in the door handle. And on the cover was the person who comes for us in a robe, and there's a head garment, a hood, and some kind of staff. And on the cover it says death. And when you open it, it's in fine print. And it speaks of how we're all sinners and how we deserve to go to hell. Have you ever seen these? Consider it grace. It goes on to say, unless you accept Jesus as your personal Savior, you will spend eternity in a lake of fire being tortured. There's a new generation of Christians, thank God, that are beginning to call some of these somewhat prevalent teachings into question. Some of you have heard of it. I'm going to paraphrase it just a little bit. They said, now, let me get this straight, okay, let me get this straight. There is this person who has this big mansion and says, if you love me and you do what I tell you, you can come live with me forever. If you love me and do what I tell you to do, you can live with me forever. But if you don't believe me exactly what I tell you to believe, I have a basement. And there are a lot of instruments of torture in this basement. Now, I love you. If you believe in me and if you do what I tell you, you can live with me forever. I love you. But hey, if you don't, I have this basement. What is the justice of God? So often, we place love in service of justice. God's justice is grace. Whatever is necessary to restore injured relationships, whatever is required to reconcile us with God, us with one another, and us even within ourselves. Today's story is a story of grace. Each day we have a choice to make. My prayer is that we choose grace. Choosing grace means we choose forgiveness. Forgiveness of those who have injured us. Forgiveness of ourselves. How many of you know that sometimes the most difficult person on the planet to forgive is ourselves? How do we know when we've reached forgiveness? Some people say, I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried. And asking me to forgive is insensitive. If you only knew what I have been through, if you only knew how someone injured me, you would not ask me to forgive. Have you ever felt like that? I believe one of the ways we can begin to forgive is to recognize that the ones who injure us fail to recognize the inherent dignity of other people and the inherent dignity within themselves. It rings platitudinous, I know, to say that because we are created in God's image, we have infinite value. That's what dignity means, dignitas, worth, value. When others injure us, it is a failure to recognize our value, which speaks to the fact that they fail to recognize their own. I've come to see that forgiveness is a decision before it is ever something we experience emotionally. I'm so grateful for the description of love that I live by. If not every day, nearly every day, I recite this description by Timothy Jackson. Love is an unconditional commitment to the good of the other. Let's just pause there. Even if we're still harboring injury, if we're moving to the place to where the ones who have hurt us, we have an unconditional commitment to their good, we know that healing is taking place. Choosing grace means choosing healing, to be free of the injury that we are harboring. When Joseph encountered his brothers, healing had taken place. They needed help, and he was willing to help them. He had still an unconditional commitment to their good. He experienced the pain of the injury, and yet he still had an unconditional commitment to their good. Jesus in John's gospel, early on already in John chapter 2, Jesus has performed the extraordinary. And the gospel reads that others began to believe in him because of the miracles that he had performed, things that did not fit their categories. And they believed in him. But there's this strange sentence. It reads that Jesus would not entrust himself to them because he knew their hearts. He did not entrust himself to them. Choosing grace is choosing forgiveness. Choosing grace is choosing healing. Choosing grace is choosing reconciliation when reconciliation is possible. Paul said it this way, insofar as it is possible with you, live peaceably with everyone. And it's at this point in this message that we move beyond a sentimental, touchy-feely, just forgive, just heal, and I know you've been injured, but pray and forgive and let it go. I wonder how many people have been told by a well-meaning Christian counselor to stay in that marriage. I wonder how many people have been told by a well-intended counselor, stay in an abusive relationship. Love is an unconditional commitment to the good of the other, open to self-sacrifice insofar as that self-sacrifice is constructive. Joseph had not yet entrusted himself to them. As the story continued He wanted to make sure that they could truly be reconciled. And so he sent initially the brothers away, and he put a silver cup in Benjamin's, his younger brother's, bag, and then sent some people to detain them and so that Benjamin would be brought back. It was when Judah, the one who sold him into slavery, said, "Take me and let my brother go." It was then that Joseph could see the transformation. He could entrust himself to his brothers. And he was overwhelmed with such joy and gratitude that he could not contain it. For some of us, we carry great injury. Injury that someone has caused us, or injury that we've caused another. I won't go into the details. You've heard part of this story on a number of occasions. One of these days, I'll just tell the whole story, but not today. There was a time in my younger life where there was an incident in which I survived and a friend of mine didn't. After a conversion experience, I had come to know that God's love really is unconditional without acceptance. But part of the human condition, if we've been taught, and I wasn't reared in church, but I'd seen enough of those tracks. I've been to enough VBSs that God possesses both the capacity to love us unconditionally and torment us forever. And so this created some of a dichotomous understanding in my mind. If God is capable of torturing us forever, and so I offered this prayer, and I can tell you I do not have any more of a direct phone line to God than anyone within the sound of my voice. But on this particular day, I heard some words back. And again, for time's sake, I asked this: what can I do to redeem myself? And at this time, I was an amateur boxer, and I was training with Malik Muhammad at the Holyfield Arena in Atlanta. And what I was being asked to do for some would sound like a recipe for success, but I knew it was not. I knew to obtain that level of success, I'd already had 3 broken ribs, training with Italy's Olympic team and Ireland's Olympic teams, which was prior to 1996 in Atlanta when the Olympics were going to be in Atlanta. I knew in order to do that, everything I ate would have to be disciplined. I would have to get up every morning, whether it was raining, whether it was cold, whether it was hot. It would be in a form of enslavement. Paul said it this way: I discipline my body. I enslave my body, and that's what it sounded like. Shortly thereafter, I happened to be reading from 1 John, and I read this passage in chapter 5 that says, "This is the victory that overcomes the world, our faith." Who is it that has overcome the world? Who is it that has become victorious over the world but the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God? This I submit to you. In one sense, those who would try to scare the hell out of us, they get it partially right. If we believe that Jesus is the Son of God, then we believe that when Jesus says what Jesus says, Jesus is saying what God would say. And that when Jesus does what Jesus does what God would do. Are you with me? Jesus is the one who said, God so loved the whole world, that whoever believes in me. Now, I know some of us have been, if there could be such a thing, some of us have been clobbered with that passage. But if we listen to it closely, God so loved the world that whoever believes in, which is to say, whoever believes him. Well, what did he just say? God so loves the whole world. Are you a part of the world? It's God's grace that sets us free, not fear of punishment, not fear of torture. Choosing grace means choosing forgiveness. Choosing grace means choosing healing. Choosing grace means, insofar as it is possible, when we can entrust ourselves to people, the relationships are restored. My prayer for us this morning is that we would choose forgiveness, choose healing, choose restoration, choose grace. Amen.